by the 7 moons of Centauri Prime. What kind of hellscape is this? Chief xenobiologist Zixtax's tentacles curled in horror as he stared at the sensor readings. The massive viewscreen of the GSS Harbinger displayed a swirling mass of white and blue, punctuated by violent electrical discharges that could fry their ship's shields in seconds. "Sir, confirmations are coming in," Second Officer Kraltex reported, his crystalline form dimming slightly in anxiety. This is a Class 15 Deathworld." The bridge fell silent. In the history of the Galactic Survey Corps, only 12 Class 15 worlds had ever been discovered. None had been successfully explored. The last attempt, on a planet designated XR 792, had resulted in the complete dissolution of an entire survey team when they discovered rather terminally that the planet's atmosphere contained fluorine instead of oxygen. "Well," Zixtax said, trying to maintain his professional composure while his tentacles betrayed his nervousness by tying themselves into knots, "at least this one's atmosphere won't dissolve our environmental suits." "Probably." "That's not funny," Sir Navigation Officer Peldrea chittered, her compound eyes reflecting the storm patterns below. "The atmospheric pressure alone is enough to crush our standard equipment. And the temperature variations. The equatorial regions swing from 313 Kelvin to 263 Kelvin in a single planetary rotation. Don't forget the radiation levels from that absolutely absurd magnetic field," Science Officer Val added, their bioluminescent spots flashing in agitation. "It's like the planet's core is having a seizure." Zixtax slithered closer to the viewscreen, his specialized sensory organs taking in the full horror of what lay before them. The planet was, by any reasonable standard, a nightmare. Vast oceans of dihydrogen monoxide covered most of the surface, a substance so volatile it could dissolve dozens of known sentient species on contact. The land masses were constantly shifting, torn apart by tectonic forces that would make any sane civilization pack up and leave. "Have the probes detected any signs of weight? What's that reading?" Zixtax squinted at a data stream flowing across his personal console. "Which of the many terrible readings are you referring to?" Sir Kraltex asked, his crystalline structure vibrating with what passed for sarcasm in his species. "These energy signatures. They're regular. Too regular to be natural." Zixtax's primary heart skipped a beat. "Val, run a full spectrum analysis of grid coordinates 47 beta through 52 gamma." The science officer spots cycled through a rainbow of colors as they processed the data. "Sir, this can't be right. I'm detecting artificial structures, millions of them." "Impossible," Peldrea declared. "Nothing could evolve to survive these conditions, let alone develop technology. The last 3 Deathworlds we studied couldn't even support bacterial life." "Ah yes, speaking of previous studies," Zixtax mused, his tentacles finally unknotting themselves as scientific curiosity overtook fear. "Remember what happened to the survey team on XJ 449? The one that landed during what they thought was a calm period." "Don't remind me," Kraltex groaned, his crystal facets dulling. "They're still finding pieces of their shuttle embedded in the stratosphere. Who could have predicted that the atmosphere would spontaneously generate cyclonic formations?" "At least they had better luck than the team on EA 224, Val added. "All they did was take a soil sample, and the ground ate their probe. Turned out the entire planet's crust was semi-sentient and had a particular taste for titanium alloys." The bridge crew shared a moment of nervous laughter, the kind that comes from staring into an abyss and realizing the abyss not only stared back but probably had teeth. "Well, my intrepid crew," Zixtax announced, straightening to his full height of nearly 2 meters, "it seems we have a mystery on our appendages. Either our sensors are malfunctioning in spectacular fashion, or we've just discovered something unprecedented. A civilization that not only survived on a Class 15 Deathworld but apparently thrived." He paused for dramatic effect, all 4 of his eyes fixed on the swirling storm patterns below. "Begin full orbital survey protocols. And someone please check if our insurance covers death by impossible planet. I have a feeling we're going to need it." "Captain, you might want to see this," Val called out, their bioluminescent spots pulsing rapidly in what the crew had learned to recognize as extreme agitation. "Our deep scan results are, well, frankly, they're impossible." Zixtax slithered across the bridge, leaving behind a trail of nervous slime that the cleaning drones immediately rushed to mop up. "In my experience, Officer Val, the word impossible usually means we're about to make a discovery that will either revolutionize science or kill us all. Sometimes both." The sensor display showed a three-dimensional map of the planet's surface, focusing on one of the larger landmasses. Through the perpetual storm systems and electromagnetic interference, clear patterns emerged: perfect geometric shapes, straight lines cutting across landscapes, vast networks of interconnected structures. "Those are roads," Peldrar whispered, her mandibles clicking in disbelief. "Actual, maintained roads. In this gravity, through these storms." "Look at the population centers," Kraltex added, his crystalline form vibrating at a frequency that indicated both excitement and terror. "They're not just surviving here, they've built structures that reach into the upper atmosphere, in winds that could strip the hull off our ship." Zixthax's tentacles curled thoughtfully around his command chair. "How are they managing the tectonic instability? Any civilization attempting to build here should have their structures regularly reduced to rubble." "That's the thing," Sir Mikesval responded, bringing up detailed scans. "They've developed some sort of flexible construction method. The buildings actually move with the ground shifts. They're designed to bend rather than break. Adaptive architecture on a Class 15 Deathworld," Zixthax mused. "The University of Proxima is going to have a collective aneurysm when they read our report. Assuming we live to write it." A sudden alert blared across the bridge, causing several crew members to emit their species equivalent of startled yelps. Sir Peldrar called out, "We're detecting communication signals. Thousands of them. Video, audio, data transmissions, they're practically saturating every frequency." "Well," Zixthax said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "I suppose this answers the question of whether we should initiate first contact protocols. They're broadcasting their existence to the entire galaxy. It's like they don't even care about predator species." "Speaking of protocols," Kraltex interjected, "which ones do we even use? The handbook doesn't cover meeting beings who treat a Class 15 Deathworld like a resort planet." The bridge crew spent the next hour in heated debate. Standard first contact procedures assumed they would be dealing with a species that had at least some sense of self-preservation. These beings, whatever they were, had built swimming pools, actual pools of dihydrogen monoxide for recreation. "They go into the acid water. For fun," Peldrar said for the third time, still unable to process this information. "They let their young play in it." "Forget the water death pits," Mikesval countered. "They have designated areas where they strap themselves to boards and slide down frozen precipitation at high speeds. They call it a sport." Zixthax had remained unusually quiet during the debate, his tentacles moving in the complex patterns that indicated deep thought. Finally, he spoke. "Send the standard greeting package. All frequencies, all formats." Sir Kraltex's crystalline form flickered in surprise. "Are you sure that's wise? We don't know how they'll react. They live on a planet that by all rights should have killed them millions of times over. They might be unstable." "Look at these population centers," Zixthax replied, gesturing at the display. "Those aren't survival bunkers or hardened military installations. Those are places where beings live and work and—" He squinted at a particular reading, ... apparently gather in large numbers to watch others engage in ritualized physical contests in open-air arenas. They hold sporting events in these conditions. Peldrar's compound eyes widened. "Voluntarily," exactly, Zixthax said, a grim smile spreading across his face. "Any species that can not only survive here but turn it into a playground isn't going to be bothered by a simple hello. Send the message." The crew watched in tense silence as their greeting was transmitted toward the planet below. They didn't have to wait long for a response. Sir Peldrar announced, her voice quavering slightly, "They're replying. In 17 different languages, including 3 we thought were extinct. And they're inviting us to something called a barbecue. Check atmospheric seals for the 18th time," Zixthax commanded, his tentacles twitching as the landing party prepared for descent. "And someone please tell me again why we agreed to land in an area they call New York." The shuttle's preparation chamber looked more like a mobile fortress. Every member of the landing party wore triple-layered environmental suits, each equipped with enough backup systems to survive a supernova. "Probably. As the human representative said it would be, and I quote, easier to blend in there," Kraltex responded, his crystalline form barely visible under layers of protective equipment. "Though I fail to see how any being could consider this location easy to exist in." Their shuttle descended through layers of atmospheric pollution that would have killed 3 different species they knew of, dodged flying vehicles moving at suicidal speeds, and finally landed in a designated area called Central Park. "At least they cleared the landing zone of native life forms," Peldrar observed through her quadruple-filtered visor, watching a crowd gather at the safety barriers the humans had erected. though I'm concerned about their containment protocols. Those barriers wouldn't stop a determined lava. Those aren't containment barriers, Mike's Val said, checking their sensors. They're just keeping the crowd at a polite distance. The humans are, mingling freely in the open air. The landing party stared in horror as they watched humans of all ages standing in the deadly conditions, many of them holding devices to record the historic moment. Some were even consuming sustenance. In the open. Without protection. Is that small human ingesting frozen flavored water? Zix asked, his voice filled with equal parts fascination and terror. In these temperatures, wouldn't that cause immediate internal crystallization? Their designated greeting party approached 3 humans wearing what appeared to be completely inadequate protective gear. In fact, one of them was wearing something called a t-shirt that left their arms exposed to the elements. The human in front, who had introduced himself over comms as Ambassador Chen, stepped forward with a warm smile. Welcome to Earth. We're honored to, he paused, taking in their heavily armored appearance. Is everything all right with your environmental systems? Yes, Zix replied, his voice slightly muffled through multiple layers of filtering. We've taken appropriate precautions for Class 15 conditions. The ambassador blinked. Then, to the horror of the alien delegation, he started laughing. Not just a polite diplomatic chuckle, but deep, genuine laughter that seemed to invite others to join in. The crowd behind the barriers, picking up on the moment, began laughing too. Oh my God, one of the other human officials wheezed, wiping tears from her eyes. They think this is harsh. Wait until they hear about Minnesota in January. I don't understand, Peldrier said, her mandibles clicking in confusion beneath her layers of protection. Our sensors indicate the local temperature is approaching 303 Kelvin. The humidity is at levels that could rust unprotected metal. And the atmospheric pressure. It's what we call a lovely spring day, Ambassador Chen explained, still grinning. A bit warm maybe, but perfect for a picnic. Speaking of which, he gestured to some humans setting up tables nearby, placing what appeared to be organic matter on flat surfaces. You're going to consume nutrients here, Kraltex asked, his crystal structure vibrating in shock. In the open, under your yellow dwarf star's direct radiation. Well, we did promise you a barbecue, the ambassador replied. Though I'm thinking you might want to. Adjust your equipment first. Those suits look pretty uncomfortable, impossible, Zix declared. Our research shows that exposure to these conditions would be fatal to most known species. Most known species didn't evolve here, the third human official chimed in, casually swatting at a flying insect. Look, we appreciate the caution, but you're really overdressed for a cookout. After 30 minutes of careful sensor verification and increasingly embarrassed discussion, the alien delegation finally agreed to reduce their protective gear to single-layer suits. The sight of humans casually walking around in what amounted to decorative fabric coverings still made them nervous. So, Ambassador Chen said, leading them toward the food tables, who wants to try a hot dog? You consume canines, Max Val asked in horror. More human laughter. No, it's just a name. Though wait until we tell you about buffalo wings. Your flying bovines evolved wings. Peldre's compound eyes widened behind her remaining faceplate. The resulting explosion of laughter from the humans nearly caused Kraltex to crystallize in panic. Ambassador Chen had to lean against a table for support. I believe, Zix observed dryly, his tentacles curling in what was becoming resignation, that we may have misunderstood several aspects of human culture. A human child nearby piped up, gleefully licking something called an ice cream cone, a concept that would give their xenobiologists nightmares. You guys are wearing spacesuits to a park. In spring. Wait until winter when we go skiing. The alien delegation shared a collective moment of dread, wondering what new form of voluntary danger skiing represented. They had a feeling this was just the beginning of their education about humanity's unique relationship with their Deathworld. And this is what we call a subway system, Ambassador Chen announced proudly, leading the alien delegation down into the underground transportation network. Pretty efficient way to move around the city. Zix tentacles coiled tightly against his body as he stared down the tunnel. You deliberately burrowed through unstable tectonic plates to build high-speed transport tubes. Well, yeah, beats traffic, a human commuter nearby commented, not even looking up from their communication device. The casual way humans treated their potentially lethal innovations was still unsettling. But what about earthquake risks? Peldra chittered nervously, her compound eyes reflecting the fluorescent lighting. Tunnel collapses. Gas pocket explosions. Oh, we engineered for that, Chen said with a wave of his hand. The whole system's designed to flex with the ground movement. Pretty standard stuff. The aliens watched in horror as hundreds of humans voluntarily packed themselves into metal containers that hurled themselves through underground tunnels at ridiculous speeds. What was worse, most of them looked bored. Their next stop was even more terrifying. "Welcome to the Willis Tower," their guide announced cheerfully. "We'll take you up to the skydeck for a great view of Chicago." Up, Caltech's crystalline form clouded with anxiety. "How far up?" "Only about 1,450 feet, the guide responded. "Just over 400 meters. The alien delegation stared at the massive structure swaying slightly in the wind. They had noticed humans' peculiar habit of building vertically, but this was beyond comprehension. "You constructed a building that pierces the clouds," Mike's Val stated flatly, their bioluminescent spots pulsing with stress. "In a zone regularly hit by atmospheric disturbances you call tornadoes." "Oh, don't worry about that," a passing maintenance worker chuckled. "This baby's built to handle way worse. Wait until you see the ledge." The ledge turned out to be glass boxes extending out from the building's face. Humans were actually paying money to stand in them, suspended above a lethal drop, taking pictures. "Look at that view," Ambassador Chen exclaimed, stepping confidently into one of the boxes. "You can see 4 states from up here." "I can see my death from up here," Zixthax muttered, but found himself oddly compelled to observe the humans' bizarre behavior. A small human child was doing what appeared to be a dance routine in one of the boxes, while its parental units recorded the performance. Their tour continued across the planet, each stop revealing new levels of what the aliens could only describe as species-wide insanity mixed with incredible innovation. In Dubai, they watched humans live in massive climate-controlled structures in the middle of a desert that could cook most species alive. "The temperature out there is hot enough to denature proteins," Peldra exclaimed. "Yeah, a bit warm today," their local guide agreed. "Maybe we should hit the indoor ski slope to cool off." The concept of creating artificial snow inside a building in a desert broke something in Caltech's logical processes. He spent the next hour in a regenerative crystal state. In Sydney, they witnessed humans casually sharing beaches with some of the most venomous creatures in the galaxy. "That's a box jellyfish warning sign," Mike's Val pointed out. "Your database says their toxin can kill in minutes. Why are there humans in the water?" "Oh, we've got lifeguards watching out for them," a beachgoer replied, adjusting their sunglasses. "Plus there's vinegar stations if you get stung. No worries." The concept of no worries while swimming with deadly creatures became a running theme. The aliens learned that humans assigned danger levels to their recreational water activities, from great for kids to expert surfers, only as if deadly conditions were just another form of entertainment. Their visit to Tokyo introduced them to the concept of building one of the planet's most densely populated cities in a zone where multiple tectonic plates met. "But it shakes all the time," Zixthax protested, feeling another minor tremor. "That's why we engineered our buildings to handle it," their Japanese guide explained, pointing out the massive shock absorbers integrated into skyscraper designs. "Besides, it keeps things interesting." By the time they reached Moscow, the alien delegation had developed a sort of numb acceptance of human behavior. When they saw humans diving into frozen lakes in the middle of winter, they merely added it to their growing list of apparently normal human activities that should be fatal. "I think I'm beginning to understand," Zixthax said during their final tour stop in Rio de Janeiro, watching humans hang glide off mountains through storm-level winds. "They don't just survive here. They've turned survival into an art form." "More than that," Caltech added, his crystal structure showing patterns of both fear and admiration as they watched a group of humans celebrating something called carnival in the streets below. "They've made thriving in lethal conditions look easy." Speaking of which, Ambassador Chen interrupted, checking his device, "Who's up for bungee jumping? There's a great spot nearby." Intentionally falling toward the ground, with only an elastic cord for safety, Peldra's mandibles clicked rapidly. "That sounds like exactly the kind of thing humans would invent," Mike's Val finished, their spots glowing with what might have been amusement. "You know what? I think I want to try it." The other aliens stared at their colleague in shock. What Mike's Val's spots pulsed defensively. "When in Rome." "Oh no," Zixthax groaned, his tentacles curling in resignation. "You've started using their idioms. We're going to need to update our first contact protocols, aren't we?" Ambassador Chen just grinned. "Wait until you try skydiving." You crossed what Zixthax stared at the historical hologram, displaying ancient human military campaigns. "The Alps," the museum curator explained. Hannibal led an army of about 50,000 men and 37 war elephants across the mountains in winter, around 218 BCE. Or elephants Peldra repeated slowly, across frozen mountains, before powered vehicles existed. Oh, that's nothing, another historian chimed in. Wait until you hear about the ancient Polynesians. They navigated the entire Pacific Ocean in wooden boats, using only the stars for guidance. The alien delegation had requested information about human history, expecting tales of bunker-dwelling survivors. Instead, they got stories that defied comprehension. These humans, called Vikings, Kraltex noted, his crystalline form shimmering with disbelief, they sailed across your planet's most dangerous oceans in open boats, without modern navigation, for fun and profit. And exploration, the curator added cheerfully. They even established settlements in Greenland, though that's not actually green, it's mostly ice. We know, Mike's Val interrupted, their spots pulsing wearily. We scanned it from orbit. No sane species would try to live there, yet humans built farms there, in the medieval period. The historical tour continued, each revelation more startling than the last. Humans had not only survived their Deathworld, they had thrived, expanded, and apparently treated lethal conditions as mere inconveniences. The Mongol Empire, the historian explained, pointing to a map, controlled land from Korea to Eastern Europe. They conducted military campaigns in everything from desert heat to Siberian winters. Your species fought wars in Siberia, Zixtax's tentacles twisted in knots, voluntarily. Multiple times the historian seemed disturbingly enthusiastic about this fact. The local populations adapted so well to the conditions that they used the extreme cold as a weapon against invaders. Used the cold as a weapon. Peldra's mandibles clicked rapidly, like the Russians did against Napoleon. Exactly. Though that wasn't just the cold, it was also the mud season before winter. The Russians called it General Mud and General Winter. The aliens had already learned to dread human laughter during historical discussions. It usually preceded something horrifying. But surely, Kraltex ventured, humans avoided the most extreme regions until developing advanced technology. The curator pulled up images of ancient Inuit settlements, Tibetan monasteries, and Andean cities. Humans have lived everywhere from the Arctic to the highest mountains to the deepest jungles. We're quite adaptable. But the Inca built an empire at altitudes that would kill most oxygen-breathing species, the historian added. They developed sophisticated agricultural techniques to grow food in conditions that shouldn't support complex life. Zixtax studied the historical records with a mixture of horror and growing respect. Your species didn't just survive these conditions. You built civilizations in them, created art, developed cultures specifically adapted to environments that should have been lethal. We had to. The curator shrugged. It's not like we had anywhere else to go. Besides, every hostile environment taught us something new. Desert cultures developed water conservation techniques. Arctic peoples created sophisticated insulation methods. Jungle civilizations learned about medicinal plants. And now, Mexval observed, their bioluminescence reflecting thoughtfully, you've combined all that knowledge with modern technology. Which explains why you treat conditions we consider fatal as mild inconveniences, Peldra concluded. Pretty much, the historian agreed. Though we still haven't figured out how to control the weather. Yet, the yet made all four aliens shudder simultaneously. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 300 species gathered for an emergency session. The topic: how to classify humanity. Order. Order in the chamber. High Counselor Vexthorian's crystalline form pulsed with authoritative light. We are here to discuss the findings of the Earth Survey Team and determine humanity's status in the galactic community. Zixtax slithered to the presentation platform, his tentacles unusually steady. After weeks on Earth, even Class 15 conditions seemed less threatening. Esteemed colleagues, our initial classification of Earth as a Deathworld was technically accurate but practically meaningless. Holograms flickered to life, showing humans engaging in various activities. The chamber erupted in chaos. Are they swimming in dihydrogen monoxide for recreation? Is that human intentionally falling from an aircraft? Why are they hitting each other with padded gloves for entertainment? If you think that's concerning, Kraltex added from his position near the platform, wait until you learn about their sport called hockey. Ambassador Chen stepped up to the platform, looking remarkably comfortable for someone surrounded by aliens who considered his homeworld a death trap. He was wearing what he called a Hawaiian shirt, which had already caused 3 color-sensitive species to require medical attention. Thanks for having me here today, he began, casually sipping from a cup of what the aliens now knew was coffee, a stimulant strong enough to kill several known species. I understand you have some questions about Earth. Questions, a methane-breathing delegate bubbled incredulously. Your species treats conditions that would kill most of us as minor inconveniences. Well, yeah, Chen shrugged. You get used to it. I mean, our planet tries to kill us in new and exciting ways pretty regularly. We just roll with it. The human activated his own presentation, showing everyday scenes from Earth. Each image caused new waves of disbelief through the chamber. This is downtown Tokyo, he explained, pointing to a massive city. Built on an active fault line. Great sushi there. And this is Phoenix, Arizona, average summer temperature around 43 Celsius. We built water parks there because why not? You intentionally splashed toxic dihydrogen monoxide on your young in lethal heat conditions, someone shouted from the back. We call it summer vacation, Chen grinned. Oh, and here's the International Space Station. Because we figured the best way to deal with our dangerous planet was to build a house in orbit. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. These humans hadn't just survived their Deathworld, they'd gotten bored with its dangers and started looking for new challenges in space. I moved to create a new classification, Zixthax announced. Earth isn't just a Deathworld, it's a crucible that forged humanity into something unique. Seconded, Kraltex's crystal form pulsed. Their ability to adapt and thrive in lethal conditions could make them valuable allies. Plus, Chen added, we make great coffee. Speaking of which, who wants to try an espresso? Several delegates, who had reviewed the chemical composition of espresso, quickly backed away from the platform. Very well, High Councillor Vex Thorian declared. We shall create a new classification for Earth and its inhabitants. But what of their potential for expansion? Their colonization plans? Chen's grin widened in a way that made several empathic species very nervous. Funny you should ask. We've actually been looking at some of those planets you classified as uninhabitable. They seem like nice starter colonies. The chamber erupted again. Zixthax's tentacles curled in what was becoming a familiar mix of admiration and horror. Of course, humans would look at other Deathworlds and see real estate opportunities, all in favor of creating a new classification and accepting humanity into the galactic community, Vex Thorian called out. The vote was unanimous, though several species were overheard muttering about humans being completely insane and terrifyingly adaptable. Welcome to the galaxy, Vex Thorian announced officially. Though we do have one request, please warn us before you start improving any other Deathworlds. No promises, Chen replied, taking another sip of his coffee. We've already drawn up plans for beachfront properties on Venus. As per Galactic Council Resolution 7249B, High Councillor Vex Thorian announced, humanity is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Federation, with all rights and responsibilities therein. Ambassador Chen accepted the ceremonial data crystal with a polite bow. We're honored to join. Though I should probably mention something before we finalize everything. Zixthax's tentacles twitched nervously. He'd learned that this particular tone in a human's voice usually preceded something terrifying. You see, Chen continued, activating a holographic display, Earth isn't really what we'd call a harsh environment. It's actually pretty mild by human standards. The chamber went deadly quiet. Even the methane-breathing delegates stopped bubbling. What do you mean? Mild, Kraltex asked, his crystalline form clouding with anxiety. Well, remember those colonies I mentioned? Let me show you our current settlement on Mars. The hologram shifted to show massive dome cities amid rust-red storms. Humans in lightweight environmental suits worked outside, setting up atmospheric processors. Some were playing a sport that involved jumping massive distances in the low gravity. That's impossible, Peldrea chittered. Mars has virtually no atmosphere, lethal radiation levels, and temperature swings that would shatter most structures. Yeah, makes for some interesting engineering challenges, Chen agreed cheerfully. But the real fun is on Venus. Check this out. The next image showed floating cities drifting through clouds of sulfuric acid. Humans had built entire communities that surfed the violent upper atmosphere of the solar system's most inhospitable planet. You call that fun? Mike's Val's bioluminescent spots were practically strobing with disbelief. Absolutely. The cloud cities are amazing. Great views, though the acid rain plays havoc with the windows. We're working on that. Oh, and here's our newest project, we're calling it Project Titan. The hologram displayed construction sites on Saturn's largest moon. Humans were literally building cities on a methane sea. Those are our methane-breathing cousins, a delegate burbled in shock. We thought that Moon was too hostile even for us. Really? We thought it was perfect for a starter colony. Nice thick atmosphere, lots of resources, Chen shrugged. Though I guess the cryogenic temperatures might seem a bit chilly if you're not used to it. Zixtax slithered forward. Let me be clear. You're saying that Earth, a Class 15 Deathworld that should have killed your species millions of times over, is your idea of a comfortable environment? Pretty much. It's got breathable air, liquid water, reasonable gravity. It's basically a paradise world compared to some places we're settling. Did I mention our plans for Mercury? Please don't, several council members said simultaneously. The thing is, Chen explained, seemingly oblivious to the growing horror in the chamber, humans really like a challenge. Earth was nice for getting started, but now we're ready to branch out. Really test our limits, you know. Your limits, Vex Thorian stated flatly, appear to be well beyond what any sane species would consider survivable. Thanks. That's the nicest thing anyone said about us all day. Now, about those other uninhabitable worlds in the database. No, Zixtax interrupted. Absolutely not. We are not classifying the literal surface of stars as potential real estate. Well, not the stars themselves, Chen grinned. Yet. But we've got some really interesting ideas about solar diving stations for research purposes. The council chamber descended into chaos as the full implications set in. They hadn't just admitted a species that could survive on Deathworlds, they'd welcomed a species that found Deathworlds comfortable and actively sought out worse conditions for fun. I move to amend Resolution 7249B, Vex Thorian declared weakly, to include a requirement that humanity warn us before they attempt to colonize anything we've classified as certain death. Seconded the entire chamber chorused. Fair enough, Chen agreed. Though you might want to update your classification system. Your certain death category seems a bit conservative. The collective shudder that ran through the Galactic Council that day would be remembered for generations to come.